Hello everyone, my name is Pranshu Kedia, one of the interns at Sarthy Ventures. Today we are going to have a small webinar on the motherhood question that an early startup may have. And today to answer these questions, we have a co-founder, Mr. Girish Batra, who would help us through. Hello sir, how are you?
I'm fine, Pranshu. Thanks for having this conversation.
So let's just begin by asking the first question that I'm also very curious about. Like, what should be ideally the number of starters that an early startup should have, number of founders that an early startup should have, because it is a good saying that too many cooks spoil the broth as well. So, what's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. Uh, so I'll share from my experience, although there's no always one right answer. In my first startup, we were three co-founders, although I was the majority shareholding co-founder. I had my second co-founder looking after the front end, which is the entire deal sourcing and operations. And the second co-founder was a technology co-founder looking after the back end and the technology piece because it was a property tech startup. In Sarthy, Sanjay and me are co-founders with equal share. And Sanjay comes from the strategy and investment domain, and I come from the market or business domain. So I maintain the startup relations, startup reach out, and to some extent even program management. But I believe with all this experience and after speaking to more than 200 plus founders in the last 4 or 5 years, there's no one right answer. But the probability of success of a startup is more if there's one key engine, especially in the early stage, who's kind of driving everything, and the others are supporting that engine to move in the right direction and keep pace. Yeah, as the startup goes bigger, if it's looking for 500,000 upwards of funding, that time the co-founders become a critical piece in the game because investors like to fund multi-founder startups. They believe that one co-founder, suppose he gets sick, suppose something happens to him, then what happens to the business? That's their key question. And that's why they prefer multi-founder companies. So there are both the answers I'm giving. One is the one key engine, which takes the startup to the next level. At the same time, once that level is reached, co-founders play a critical role to make the startup investment worthy.
That's great to hear. As I can just summarize that in a short, like initially, one founder must be there, who must be the driving force for the startup, and once we reach on to a good level, there should be helping hands as well for the co-founder. It not is possible for to handle him alone all the way. So let
Perfect.
me come to the second question here. Like, upon funding, how much of the are the attributes that depends upon the pedigree of the founders, or is just upon the idea? Does the investor give equal weightage to the both or not? What's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. So, see, pedigree is losing its scope in the game. Of course, pedigree is valuable, but the value is declining. So if someone would have looked at startup success 5 years back, he would have surely given pedigree much more weightage than he's doing today. And we have case studies of Zepto, 19-year-old founders of Zepto who left their technology degree abroad and came to India and started it. And it's almost close to a unicorn valuation in less than a year. So I believe pedigrees may be important, may not be important. In fact, if it is important for an investor or a customer, it may be only for giving him or her, the founder, more business. But finally, it is the individual and the idea which takes the business to the next level. So the weightage of pedigree is only decreasing as new and new startups come in, founded by dropouts, founded by all kinds of people. So Oyo comes to mind in terms of the founder being a college dropout. So there are different startups with different. So the value of pedigree is only going down. And if investor is giving weightage to pedigree, it is mainly a bias. Okay, I have come from IIT, so I believe that IIT founder would be doing better. But there are enough examples, both sides of the IIT founders have failed startups and non-IITians have created unicorns. So there are enough examples, both sides.
Okay, that's great to hear, and it's quite encouraging for the young startups as well that the value or the idea that they're posing are much more rather than experience. They can do much more ahead in life at an early stage as well. So now
True.
that brings me to my next question. Like, there's a lot of saying, like we have seen many bootstrap startups like Zeroda that have grown slowly over many years, and whereas there are startups who take funding at an early stage and grow at a much faster speed. So, what's your viewpoint on that? Should a startup initially be bootstrapped or straight away look for funding for growth at a higher speed?
Yes. So actually, I see a lot of founders who've done a startup to get funding, which I believe is the wrong key focus. So these founders spend more than 50%, sometimes even 80% of their time in the funding game, and with limited success. So just imagine you spend 3 years of your startup energy in trying to raise money of your startup with limited or no success. That time could have been very effectively used, like Nikhil Kamath used in Zerodha, purely focus on the business, focusing on the customer and building it brick by brick. Okay, it took more time. If Nikhil Kamath had money, he would have made a Zerodha in say 2 years, less 3 years. But Zerodha got built in spite of not getting any funding or not going for funding. So I believe funding should be the number two goal. The first goal should be building a powerful business which gives tremendous value to customers and with a strong business model very early in the game. Funding can be a topper which will help you scale from one city to multi-city, one set of customers to more set of customers quickly. But you'll scale in the next stage even if you don't get funding. So funding only is a accelerator which kind of gives you more BHP to take your startup the next level, but the car will not crank if it does not receive funding. If you build the business in that mindset, that's the best way to go.
Okay, that's very valuable advice for all the startup founders out there. Focus more on your business. The funding will come as and when it has to be. That's right. As we focus more on business, the funding is right on the way. Thank you for your time and sharing all your valuable insights with us.
Thanks, Priyanshu. I love to interact with startup founders and people who love the startup ecosystem because I believe that is the future. The Ambanis, the uh, Mark Zuckerbergs, which are not found, are in the startup ecosystem. And I pray we have more of them from India. Thank you. Bye.